How's it going, guys? My name is Graham, welcome to Two Left Thumbs. Smash Bros has long been the ultimate example of crossover gaming. All your favorite characters together in one arena to duke it out. After years of arguing with your friends about who would win in a fight, Kirby or Yoshi, you could actually put that to the test. With the release date for Bounty Battle, the latest attempt at Indie Smash, being set for September 10th, I wanted to quickly talk about how exciting this game is. Although, I'll be honest, the animation and gameplay in this first trailer look stiff. I'm hopeful that a hands-on experience in-game will feel a lot better than what we see on display here. This first look kinda quells my excitement a little bit, but that wish fulfillment factor of having everyone together in one game has kept my interest thus far. I thought it would be interesting to lay out all the other post-Smash failed attempts at this concept that have paved the way, while raving a bit about Bounty Battle's fan service and massive potential. I hope this video can be equal parts informative, as well as just letting an indie game fanboy gush. This game was first revealed on the crowdfunding site Fig back in 2017. The plan was to have 10 original characters and 20 indie guests. They asked for $30,000 and raised closer to 40. It looks like at launch we'll have features from 23 indie series and 16 arenas based on those game worlds. Looking at the trail that's been blazed all the way from Smash Bros to now, I'm sure everyone has a very particular memory of their very first introduction to the Smash Bros series. My own story probably dates me a little bit because I rented a Nintendo 64 at the local movie gallery for my 7th birthday party. I grabbed copies of Mario Party, Mario Kart, a few tried and true staples. But one game on the shelf caught my eye. A game I had never heard of, with Mario and Pikachu on the cover? What amazing and wonderful bit of insanity is this? Once we had booted that one up back home and started playing, it was literally all we did the rest of the day, never going back to any of the other rented games. It was new and fresh, and all the things we never even knew we wanted. Party fighters have been struggling ever since to capture that particular blend of chaotic and casual. Ever since that day, myself and many others have been obsessed with the idea of every video game character under the sun someday joining Smash and allowing us to further live out these fantasies. And at this point, we've gotten more than we likely ever had any right to ask for. Mario, Sonic, Mega Man, Snake, Pac-Man, Banjo, and so many others that all now exist in this universe together, the enormity of that is incredible. But in all this time, indie games and characters have been totally left out of the Smash loop. The closest we've ever really come is a skin to look like Sans. That's it. And if any indie game was ever gonna make it into Smash properly, it would have been Undertale. Instead, it's now up to ambitious developers to climb that mountain themselves and stake out their own place in 2D fighting game mashup history. Look all the way back to the fan-made Mugen that originally came out in 1999, the same year as Smash. People just want so desperately to have their favorite characters punch one another. While the Smash roster is enormous, there's barely anything obscure on that list. There have been fan-made initiatives like Project M dating back to 2011, where players modded Smash Bros to make their ideal game, balancing characters and mechanics to something that better matched their preferences and that elite sort of tournament play. The plan was to begin adding newcomers like Knuckles, Isaac from Golden Sun, and Lyn from Fire Emblem before the project was discontinued. Much more recently, we had Super Clash Bros. That was a fully moddable fighter game adding an insane number of characters. You could battle Batman versus Michael Jackson if you wanted. In an effort to make a commercial product, and not get stomped on by cease and desists, this has been rebranded as Super Clash Crossover, with characters being replaced by unique, more generic sprites. The idea being that everything is still moddable, with Steam Workshop integration being intended. So while the game will launch with these copyright-friendly templates, fans can then simply reinsert whatever they want into the game. It's slated to be released in 2020. It sounds like an awesome project and is definitely worth keeping an eye out for. The game even has a few super obscure indie characters being included on launch. Sorry, I only barely recognize a couple of these names. It still doesn't quite hit that ultimate level indie representation. I'm so hopeful that this game catches on and that people commit really hard to contributing to it, because this is probably the closest we'll ever come to having every possible character in a game together. These fan projects have spanned the last 20 years and can never really have proper commercial releases, at least not in the ready to pick up and play format. the earliest attempt I know of to formally create and release an indie Smash was actually a Flash game. It's pretty on brand for this channel for all conversations to devolve into Flash games, but hey, that's just what I know. There had been a few attempts at this with people essentially demaking Smash Bros, but by far the biggest effort and best result was Newgrounds Rumble. This was created by heavyweights like -1, Lewis, and Mind Chamber. It included a bunch of highly detailed and fleshed out versions of classic Newgrounds characters. We had Pico, Salad Fingers, Tankman, Alien Hominid, and more. They even updated the game down the line with Hank from Madness and Fancy Pants Man. That's right, a free Flash game back in 2007 was doing DLC fighter editions. While the game is a big deal for Flash gamers and Newgrounds fans, there isn't any multiplayer, the movesets for each character are pretty basic, and the character roster, while diverse, is super niche. Like, nobody knows who Pico and Joe is. The funny thing is, looking back at this, Bounty Battle's animation looks closest to Newgrounds Rumble. Although, Rumble is probably more stylistic overall, which doesn't bode well for Bounty Battle. Maybe that's just a testament to how well done Rumble was all those years ago. Maybe we should be remastering, expanding, and releasing that game. If any of those original creators want to hit me up and make that happen, let's talk. Looking more to the big-name AAA side of things, it somehow took Sony 13 years to come up with an answer to Smash Bros. In 2012, we got PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, a game with the longest, least catchy title imaginable. Also, it's funny to think years later that Battle Royale would become its own genre unrelated to this game, now making this title even more confusing. You could uppercut Sackboy in his boy sack with Big Daddy's Big Drill, which is baffling, horrifying, and a 100% true sentence, so that's pretty cool, I guess, but that didn't really translate into sales. They've essentially done nothing to re-release or support the series or create sequels. It was a one and done. I honestly never got the chance to play this one. Looking at reviews, there was an apparent lack of content, and a new fighting system that involved filling meters before landing a super move killing blow, and that all received quite the mixed reception. It was praised for being different from Smash and requiring some strategy, while others felt that system was unfair, inaccessible, and just less fun. And that was probably the biggest issue. Even if it was a great fighting game, without that mass appeal and accessibility, it would remain a mid-selling niche game rather than a must-own party staple. Anyone's first full attempt at creating an indie Smash Bros. Came with 2015's Indie Game Battle, an aptly named game that unfortunately is no longer even available for purchase. I say unfortunately because it feels like something that would have been worth exploring further. But as someone who has this game on their Steam account still and has played it some, let me tell you, it was a mess. It was definitely too ambitious of a project for this new dev, who appeared to be learning 3D art, programming, and game design simultaneously with this huge mashup brawler. Yeah, it had issues. Despite the varying degrees of quality within the game, some of the characters looked quite rough, there were some balancing issues, some of the controls were a little floaty and off. In the end, I really respect the dev for removing the game from the store when they realized it would never live up to what they wanted and that they no longer planned to work on it. Rather than selling people a promise they couldn't keep, a half-baked, unpolished product, and something that didn't quite match up with the vision they had in mind, they instead pulled it entirely. It's a shame that the game is now somewhat lost, but I think that was really admirable. Despite its issues, the roster in this game was buck wild and deserves some serious recognition. This game had like 70 characters. There was Fancy Pants, Nico from One Shot, the Adventure Pals, the Goat from Goat Simulator, the Batter from Off, Phil Eggtree, Brad Armstrong, and the Meatly? I mean, he's like a comic book character and glorified mascot. What's he doing here? I mean, what? I guess once you secure a few names, the ball starts rolling and you can hopefully pick up bigger and more recognizable names. There's a pretty awesome selection here. The ambition of this game truly knew no bounds. 2017 and 2018 appeared to be the range where developers stopped trying to make the next Smash by assembling a wild array of known characters and instead shifted their focus to creating an original cast of characters. There's no licensing issues there. You can ensure that everything about your game becomes iconic and recognizable in its own right without relying on selling potential players on someone else's creation. I can see the rationale there for sure, especially when anyone else other than Smash tried to do this, it just didn't really land. So in the span of a year and a half, we had Rivals of Aether, Brawlhalla, Slap City, and Brawlout. Notably, all of these have cameo appearances from a very limited roster of indie characters, and despite massive amounts of creativity and originality being on display here, there's still that moonshot dream of wanting all our faves together under one fighting roof. Rivals of Aether include Shovel Knight and Ori and Sin from Ori and the Blind Forest as DLC extras, although Shovel Knight tends to get around, the guy's a guest in every indie game there is. But beyond that, everything is 100% unique characters. They've slowly even added more to the roster, investing in themselves and creating more original characters. Brawlhalla went a free-to-play approach, which has been wildly successful for them. They were published by Ubisoft, and as such feature bigger names like Rayman and Lara Croft, and there are also some unexpected inclusions like Owlboy, John Cena, and Finn from Adventure Time. Maybe I need to play this game. I also like that Brawlhalla plays nice with Aether and included their character Rano. And of course, Shovel Knight and some of his companions appear in this game as well. Then there's Slap City, who just said, you know what, we're gonna be weird and fun, and that's all that matters. This game is a bodybuilding duck that punches people with weights. It rules. I also really like their early access strategy of slowly raising the game's price to match the added content, effectively rewarding early adopters. I've seen other games follow that model, and I really like it. They have one cameo character with It'll Do, which is a game they also developed. And it makes sense to only have one guest slot when the overall roster is kept quite small. Maybe once things are more balanced and polished, they can worry about adding more. Speaking of polish, Brawlout has such an insane amount of polish that it's shocking it wasn't made by a bigger studio. While I love the art style of these other games, this one more than maybe any other looks like it could actually rival Smash. It's so stylistic and clean and just, it looks good. Brawlout has 25 characters, each of which has alt variants that have different stats and movesets. That's really awesome. For their own guest slots, they have appearances from Dead Cells, Yooka-Laylee, Hyperlight Drifter, and Guacamelee, which honestly just makes so much sense. Juan was the star of one of the first major indie platforming brawlers. He should probably be in all these games. But somewhat shockingly, no Shovel Knight. At this point, I'd also like to mention Indie Pogo, which is unique and weird and not really a Smash-like, but absolutely scratches that itch of piling a bunch of indie darlings into a game together. It came out between Slap City and Brawlout and is an absolute gem. If you've never experienced this wonderful blend of unique fighting mechanics, charming art, and a great blend of wacky characters, then definitely give it a look while you're at it. And this one definitely does have Shovel Knight. And now, this week, we're getting Bounty Battle. It's landing on Steam, PS4, Nintendo Switch, and Xbox One on September 10th. We're introduced to this game with this incredible, bombastic animated trailer that reminds me of the stunning work done on the My Friend Pedro trailer. I had to look it up, and while it's not the same animation studio, this one was instead done by Creapole, who is another French animation studio, so they have that in common. Guys, I think I might love French animation. I'm gonna have to dive deeper on that in my own time. Like, holy crap, this game looks incredible. How could you not be excited about that? And then you look at the gameplay and it's kind of like, I don't know. I'm a little worried about it. But the lineup of characters is so good. There's Awesome Knots, Axiom Verge, Battle Chasers Night War, Blasphemous, Blocks That Matter, Blubberbusters, Darkest Dungeon, Dead Cells, Death's Gambit, Doko Roko, EITR, Flint Hook, Guacamelee, Jotun, Nuclear Throne, Oddmar, Owlboy, Pankapu, Ruin of the Reckless, SteamWorld Dig, Super Combo Man, The Bug Butcher, and Tower of Samsara. Also, like 3 years earlier, Double Fine teased that Raz from Psychonauts would be in this game, which makes sense, they were both funded on Fig. It's unclear if he'll get added in a free content update or DLC, or if he was for some reason cut from the roster. I'm also surprised to see a complete lack of Shovel Knight. Like, honestly, not joking around, I'm genuinely surprised. I also would have loved to have seen Hollow Knight on there somewhere. Honestly, with those two characters, this would have just, really just had it all. I really appreciate the blend of big-time breakouts, as well as some more unknown indies. And even though there's varying tiers there, I still recognized every game on the list. There aren't too many deep pulls on this roster that nobody would know. It appears that this game literally has everything I ever would have asked for from a Smash-like party fighter indie game. I just wish the gameplay looked a little more promising. What I think is going on here is that they committed so hard to keeping characters close to their original styles, as is the norm for Smash Bros. But in doing that, they sacrificed some animation potential. Because they committed to making some of these characters so detailed, they have to limit the frames of animation, otherwise one character would take a year to animate. That also means that their movesets potentially have to be a little more limited. And if a few characters have more simplistic animation, unfortunately all of them have to, or else they won't match up. I will say that the effects and everything applied look really fun, and I can appreciate that redrawing every frame of each attack would have been an enormous task. You need all that lead up and follow through as well as the massive impact moment. That's crazy difficult to pull off. Newgrounds Rumble actually did it, but that game took years to make. Movesets are super limited, character designs are somewhat simplistic, and even then the animators took a crazy amount of artistic liberties to make that work. Maybe that would have been a better approach for Bounty Battle. Right now, they kinda look like Paper Mario characters, and really I would compare it to something from the Flash game era, but it would have to be pretty well any other game than Newgrounds Rumble. And while stylistically that isn't necessarily a bad thing, it certainly doesn't live up to the hype instilled by that animated trailer. Hopefully there's more to the gameplay than there currently appears to be. I'm still very excited for this. I really want it to be good and do well. This could be our indie ultimate. If it's successful, they could just continue to add new characters and stages forever. Please, please be good. I hope this little snippet of Smash-like history has been informative. I was talking to some friends on Discord, and I have no idea what to call these games. We basically called them Smash Bros. Games, Smash-likes, 2D brawlers, and party fighters. I don't know if there is an accepted genre term for this. If there is, please tell me. I feel like I'm totally out of the loop here. It feels crazy to me that there's not an accepted term for this style of game. Anyways, this is just like a bonus video that I got really excited about and kind of hammered out in a day. I really hope it told an interesting story, and hopefully I convinced you to check out at least one of the games I named. I'll make sure the description has links to all of them if any single one stood out to you. Thank you to patrons of the channel. I just got excited and just needed to ramble, and I haven't done that sort of video in a while. Thank you all so much for watching. If I left out any games, please let me know. I want to know about them, and I'll see you again soon.